tell you, there we go. Our company FishDonkey is changing the way fish are measured in fishing tournaments. Currently they're measured mostly by weight. We want to change it to being measured by length. And the way we started this a little over a year ago. It took a while to develop. We have an iPhone app and an Android app and a website that all work together. It's self-funded. We're bootstrapping, no investors, so we have limited funds. We released our product just late last summer. I'm a founder. I have a double-E degree from Minnesota. I recently moved back to Minnesota from Texas after living down there quite a while. I have a grad degree from MIT. I started 3 other companies. This is really my favorite so far. I don't know if it's going to be the most profitable so far, but I like it the best because I love the outdoors, I love fishing, and I believe in conservation. So some of the reasons we want to change away from traditional tournament format of measuring fish by weight. Weigh-in fishing, if you've been involved in tournament fishing, it's very labor intensive. Everybody has to gather the fish as they catch them throughout the day, keep them in live wells. And then they have these big tanks. People carry the fish in water, up, present it, weigh it. Every fish is weighed. There's Department of Natural Resources people usually on hand after a tournament, and they're resuscitating fish. They're down in the water, making sure they're able to swim away from the tournament site. Sometimes they'll release them out in the lake, but any way you look at it, you're moving fish around the lake, taking them out of their natural environment, moving them away from where they were feeding and putting them in a new area after handling them all day. And another problem you have with tournament fishing is you can't keep slot fish. So I don't know if you're familiar with slots, but say for walleyes, it might be any fish between 18 and 28 inches needs to be immediately released to the water. That'd be an example of a slot. So in a tournament, that means if you can catch one fish above 28, well, you can keep that, but you're probably going to be a winner in the tournament. Or you're trying to catch like 17.9-inch fish, and so it's this kind of weird dynamic for a tournament that everybody's out trying to catch a fish just barely under 18 inches so that they can catch the biggest and fattest fish. And so it results in a lot of cheating too, where people will put weights in fish's mouth. They'll take a fish that's a little too long and trim the tail with their fillet knife or scissors. There's all kinds of things that can go on. And so if you just do it by length and you immediately release fish, you can keep slot fish. So that's one difference. And I think the third really big problem with traditional tournaments is the mortality. And it's not just the mortality that you get where fish die, because if your fish dies, people won't bring it in and have it weighed. You'll get a penalty. But fish within 6 days, there's a large number of fish that die. And this data that I have on here is from a Texas Parks and Wildlife study that they did on largemouth bass, which are generally a very hardy fish. They're very good for tournament fishing. And what they found in this study is a really super neat study. They got an exemption from the state so that they could keep slot fish, which is generally your bigger fish, which is what are kept in tournaments anyway. And then they ran in conjunction at the same time a catch and release tournament, held those fish separately in this huge holding area in the lake. Right next to it, they ran a weigh-in tournament and held those fish in a huge contained area. And what they did is they released the fish to these areas, and they found that the weigh-in fish, which were kept in the live well, weighed in. 38.2% overall of the weigh-in fish died after the tournament within 6 days. 2.5% of the catch and release fish died, which is about normal with you hook a fish and it's just hooked badly, something happened to it and it died even though you released it. The larger fish had the higher mortality rates. So slot fish, none died in catch and release, and 46% died in weigh-in fish, in the weigh-in tournaments. And above the slot fish, which is your biggest fish, your best fish in the lake, none of them died in catch and release, and 100% died in the weigh-in tournament within 6 days. But that last one I put an asterisk by because only 3 fish above the slot were caught. 1 was a catch and release, and it did live, and the 2 that were weighed in both died. Alright, so that's a big problem is weigh-ins are labor intensive and fish die. Another problem, so we're going to say if we move to length, catch and release is now possible. But one of the things that's difficult about currently doing catch and release tournaments is people can just email in and pull a photograph of themselves. We don't know when they took it. So what we do is we use an app. We've created an app. All photos are taken through the app. So the app knows when you took that photo, and we know that you took it during the tournament. We use the metadata in the photos. We have altered photos. It's like, this is kind of suspicious. I'm not sure which one of those was altered. What we do to stop people from altering their photos is, when you take your photo through the app, we encrypt it, and so we do a checksum on it, and we do some things in the background, but if any little bit of that photo is then altered, it'll send a flag to the tournament host, and that's an invalid photo. The other thing is, people could fish on the wrong lake or in a different area. If you do it through our app, we know where you are during the tournament, we know where you took your photos at. Another problem with traditional catch and release tournaments is people taking pictures of the same fish. So say you wanted to catch the largest 4 fish, they could take a photo of it, throw it in the live well, go to a different spot in the lake, take some more photos of the same fish, throw those, throw those back in the live well. You could photograph the same fish all day long if you wanted. So what we do with our app is we have an option for video release. And so you'll take your photos, it'll know where you are, it knows what time it is, and it'll do the same thing with the video release. So we know that you just released that fish, and everybody can see that this happened. It's all done through the app, and it's secure. One other thing with traditional, mostly catch and release, but also really like contests. We're finding like bait shops and businesses that just want to like promote like a new fishing product or a resort. One of the things that they have problems with is if they want to run a contest, people are emailing in all these photos and they're collecting them and they're taking the data and the fish and the photos and they're handling all this. But if you use the app, it automatically puts it onto a live leaderboard. No one has to measure the length of the fish and sort them. It's just all automatically happening for you. It saves a ton of time. And so this is an example of one of our leaderboards from the phone. Runs on iPhone and on Android. This is the largest walleye category. We can do any species. We can do largest, we can do grand slams, we can do wild card, we can do stringers of fish. It's very versatile as far as different kind of tournaments you can run on it. You can create a tournament on the phone, and you can join a tournament on the phone. So as soon as you log on to FishDonkey, it gives you 2 buttons. You can either create a tournament or join a tournament. During the tournament, when you log on to FishDonkey, if you're signed in, this is what you'd see, is you'd see your leaderboard. And when you're on the leaderboard, you hit the enter a fish button on the bottom, and that's what brings up the camera app. You submit, you take your photos of your fish and your video release, and then as soon as you do that, it's really kind of a text-based entry that goes onto the leaderboard in terms of your name and the size of your fish and the species. But the media is also sent separate. And these are linked up, so this will run without an internet connection. Even if you have 0 connection, you can still run it, record your fish, and then when you get back in a connection area, it'll sync up and send it in with the correct times. As a host, and actually everyone participating can click on any one of the entries in the leaderboard, like say number 4, Nicholas Nissen. You can click on that, see his fish. Anybody in the tournament can look at it and say, hey, this looks, this is a nice fish, this was a good catch, or it wasn't. But as a host, you have the opportunity to change it to verified or unverified, and that just means that they reviewed it and everything was okay. The other thing that the app can do is it can communicate with all the contestants in the tournament. So if there was a storm coming or something, you needed to end the tournament early, say it was a 1-day tournament and there was a tornado coming, you could say, bad weather coming, tournament's ending now at 2 p.m., come in, and so everybody would get that message. It's also good for ice fishing that way, because I don't know if you've participated in ice fishing tournaments, but they do a lot of raffles on the ice, and it's actually a little hard to hear when they're announcing the numbers. And so if you run it through the app, you can just hit text all, and you could text out like ticket 4545 is, you know, the winner of the ice auger. Yeah, so we started looking at this, you know, we think this is going to be the way tournaments are run in the future, is measured by length and not by weight. It just makes sense, especially if you show it to like kids. They're like, I don't understand why we would ever weigh them. Why would we set up these weigh stations and drag the fish all around? Why wouldn't we just do it this way right away? But as you look at it, it starts to change the way you can do tournaments as well, because now it makes it really easy to do multi-day tournaments. You don't just have to have a tournament that runs from 12 till 3 or, you know, 1 day. You could do it for a whole month. You could do it with people in your office. Say there's 17 people in your office that want to participate. You could say, in this 1 month, pick 1 day and you get to enter your fish, you know, on this 1 day. And what it'll do is other people will be working. If you go out and you become the new leader, say someone caught a 20-incher and now it's bigger than Tony Nisson's, it'll give you a notification while the app is, it'll just be in your pocket while you're working. It does a donkey sound. It goes, like this little bit of that. And so there's a lot of different things you can do once you get away from physically weighing fish.
1 minute.
1 minute? Okay, so the way we make money on this is it's free to create a tournament. There's two kind of tournaments. Free tournaments, which are free to join and free to create. It's always free to create, or you can do paid tournaments. And if it's a paid tournament, we take a small % fee on the tournament, so it adds on. So if it's a $10 tournament, FishDonkey gets $1.50. So we're going to make some money off of that. There are also the users, so it's a very market-specific group, people who fish in tournaments. And so there's a lot of value there to sponsors and to other people who would like to market to those users. And also we're finding out, we'll have sponsor privileges. We haven't signed any up yet. We've been avoiding it. We want to run more tournaments before we go after some big sponsors. But we're going to actually work it so that if you create a tournament, you can use our sponsors, so you don't have to go out and get all your sponsors again. You can get local sponsors, but we'll have some also large sponsors that will work with you in your tournament. And so there'll be some money that we make off of that. We're also finding that people want help, especially people who are like 50 and older, want help setting up the tournaments and running them. Like, they don't always get it. They don't understand like how this is good to use a phone to run their tournament. And so they want people helping them do it and running audio visual after the tournament with photos and just basically managing and running the tournament. Another important group that I think is interested in what we're doing and will be interested are state fisheries management, so like departments of natural resources, because we're going to have data on fish from all the lakes, and we'll know what the species are, what the size are, and their, you know, catch and release. So it's not going to, the data's not going to replace the surveys that the states currently do on their